We were asked to regale the group with stories of our first time jamming. My first time jamming was more than 30 years ago now, so the details have pretty much been lost to history, but my first time as a game master was my second session, playing basic Dungeons and Dragons, and it happened a few days after I played my first session. So I understood how characters were made, I understood how the regular interaction with the rules took place, combat, initiative, that sort of thing. And through observation, I recognized that I should have read the basic rulebook, so I did that. And I recognized I needed to be familiar with the creatures I was going to use, so I did that, and that there be a map, so I made that. And we used an extension onto the starter adventure in the back of the basic book. That's what my friend had done. He had taken me in through that as the opening, and then had filled in the blanks with his own creation, and I did the same thing. And so basically the first part of the adventure was me imitating his style, which included, having a Game Master screen and having the rule book open so I could reference anything that might come up. There was no stress or pressure to have every rule memorized, nothing like that. I wouldn't encounter that actually for several years. I had a good grasp of the creatures that might come up. I had a good sense of the maps, and we started the adventure. I started at Overland, which he hadn't. He started it right inside the dungeon, but I led him up to the dungeon with like a treasure map, and then he went inside. He recognized it was the same dungeon. He smiled. He went through the same sort of stuff, and then when it changed, he was very surprised. And when I had played through his scenario, I'd gone through a few rooms, recognized I was getting close to the encumbrance limit because I kept asking him, how much can I carry, how much can I carry, and he finally said, well, you're carrying a lot. And when he said I'm carrying a lot, I had my character do a retreat, sneak back out, go back to town, and cash in. He'd never seen that before, and well, I had a reputation of not losing a character ever after. So I guess that was the beginning of it, positive reinforcement. He, however, ran into a lot of trouble, and he kept going forward, even though, as he had done, I had set the encounter to get more and more difficult the further you went into the complex. He just wanted to keep pressing on, and he lost quite a few henchmen. We were playing with henchmen, and finally, when he recognized that his forces had been whittled down to the point where they might not be able to get back out, he camped, and that's where the session had to end, and we never did pick it up. We had discussions after that session about building your own campaign world, and we wanted to kind of build one together and co-GM it back and forth and that sort of thing. And so we never went back to those particular characters and that particular part of the world, and I was fine with that because I didn't really like the dungeon, primarily because it didn't have a bathroom, it didn't have any kind of internal consistency, and so very early on I felt those stirrings of what's now called simulationism deep inside. The complex had to make sense. Someone had to have built it and put it there. It couldn't just be a fantasy dungeon. It couldn't just be an excuse for an adventure. Not even when I was 13 did I feel that way. So we scrapped everything that had been built, and we started to build a pretty logical world. We added in stolen bits of Greyhawk when he got access to a module and that sort of stuff. And that really is it. My first time game mastering, my second time playing, and a lot of emulation of what I had seen and contribution of my own particular style. Have access to rules about dealing with henchmen, let's say, properly, and we didn't use them for very long, and so our henchmen were the same as characters, except that when I played under my friend, the henchmen basically did what you told them. They were hirelings. They didn't question. They didn't have a lot of personality. And what I had done was give them all personalities. I'd had to create the characters, and as you go through the character creation process, you know, you get ideas about who these people are. So I made note of that. And so he found, as he starts going into the dungeon, that he's getting commentary. He's getting, "Oh, I don't think we should go that way." Stuff like that from the other members of his party. He'd be like, "Shut up, you!" Right? "Who's paying you?" And they would shut up, and then they would just start grumbling to each other. You know, "I think we should have gone left instead of gone right. And this water bag is getting heavy. Why do we have to bring so much water? And is anyone going to use this pole?" And stuff like that. And because I'd asked him what the 10-foot poles were for, I had no idea. I mean, I didn't know about traps. I didn't know about anything. And he just said, "Oh, you just buy a 10-foot pole." And I hated that kind of answer. So in this dungeon, he never got to the room. In the dungeon, I had a light source, you know, like a trap door that could be opened in the roof that was conveniently 10 feet up, so the 10-foot pole would have a purpose, but oh well. So, my first time game mastering, maybe too much reality for what the guy who introduced the game to me may have wanted, but I fit in well with the group of players that he introduced me to later when we had a small group. And then after that, I was starting my own groups, and it didn't really matter what anybody else wanted. I was, you know, kind of creating the atmosphere around the table, and, you know, maybe I have been ever since.